Good afternoon and welcome to the regular board meeting for the Sunshine Coast Regional District for Thursday, December 12th, 2024. It's 1:02 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order and acknowledge that the SCRD is located on the traditional territories of the Shishal and Squamish nations. Directors, in front of us we have an agenda today. Are there any amendments to make to this agenda? If not, I will look for a motion to adopt, please. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And can I have a motion to receive all reports, communications, and delegation materials? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? That is also carried. Thank you. Moving right along to item 3.1, regular board meeting minutes of November 28th, 2024, starting on page 4 of the agenda. Directors, are there any errors or omissions in these minutes before we move to adopt? Seeing no hands, I would look for a motion to adopt, please. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the minutes or unfinished business that directors would like to flag or ask about? All right, and with that, we will move on to item 5.1, which is a presentation from Gaetan Royer, Chair of the Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce. So, welcome. We turn it over to you. You'll have to pull the microphone fairly close to you when you speak.
Okay, it's green. All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address the board. I would like to start with basically making sure that we recognize the fact that there used to be 3 chambers, and a lot of volunteers have merged into the new chamber and continue to serve, but many of them have operated in the community, promoting the business community for many decades. We discovered very early in the merger that it had been tried before. When I tried to log in and to create this URL, it had been created many years before by the Gibson's Chamber. So it was time for this to take place. What the business community that we represent needs is basically competent infrastructure. We really rely on the communities and the local governments to provide all kinds of services that are often invisible until they break down, and we really appreciate your contribution to that. We expect that all the business owners who have to interact with local governments are going to find people who are customer-oriented, and local government that's going to create a climate that supports investments, that welcomes and facilitates reinvestment in the community. Particularly, there's quite a number of businesses that are in need of reinvestment by business owners. and in many cases by landlords who are not business owners other than being landlord. And we think that this is something that's holding back some of the progress in the community. We've developed a strategic plan. We worked quite hard on involving a lot of people in the community, a lot of business owners, and our new board adopted this plan, which lists a very large number of goals. It's an ambitious plan, and we already have established some success arising from our inter-organizational relationship with the tourism, Sunshine Coast Tourism, for example. We've had quite a bit of success in that regard, and quite a number of progress, quite a bit of progress has been made. We're coming to you with 4 requests. The first one is to help us in connecting with business owners. We would like to see that when people apply for a new license, business license application, or renew their license, that they would receive information from the chamber. And we realized that you can't share email addresses and information without people volunteering to do that, but having an opt-in or opt-out button on your website alongside the application to invite people to share their contact information with us. That's our first ask. The second ask, there's been a number of things that as a new chamber we found, we inherited from Scredo. Some of them we've adopted readily. And basically are doing it. But one of those requests is a regional database that is very valuable, that we would like your cooperation. So we're making the same ask to the District of Sechelt as well as the town of Gibsons, and we think that there's formulas that exist for the reallocating those kinds of requests. And hopefully it's in time for your budget preparation. The third ask is we want to organize in the fall of 2025 an economic development initiative which would be invest in the Sunshine Coast Forum. This is something that's been done in other communities quite successfully before, and it's basically inviting people to come in and hear about how the community invests in itself, what are the big capital plans that are in place, and then hear about public sector and private sector opportunities for people to invest. New schools, new public affordable housing buildings that would be initiated by the local government, and also investment opportunities, lands that are available for development, and master plans that have been prepared for those developments, as well as investment in tourism infrastructure and other avenues like commercial recreation and those kinds of investments. So our ask is to have the SCRD represented in an initial meeting to basically develop the plan for what this Invest in the Sunshine Coast Forum is going to look like, what are the kinds of things that are going to be part of it, and how is every group going to participate in that. Sunshine Coast Tourism is working side by side with us in that regard. So that may be something that you want to delegate to your staff, and we'd be happy to meet with staff in that regard to advance that project. The last ask is with regards to collaboration. And we have a couple of examples which, when I shared them with the District of Sechelt, had a bit of a reaction to it, but we still feel very much there would be an interest in the business community to see their taxes used as effectively as possible and to eliminate duplication and triplication of effort. The first example is the housing needs assessment, which is in 2020, there was a single report that covered the entire Sunshine Coast, and this was achieved collaboratively. In 2023, there was a single report coordinated by the Housing Action Table. I've been a member of that Housing Action Table for several years, and some people here have been attending some of the meetings. But then this year, we have 3 separate reports written by 2 different consulting groups, one Urban Matters and the other one KPMG. So that means the local governments have received 3 invoices, and we end up with community groups and investors who come here and want to look at the information, having to consult 3 reports. And some of them are not quite using the same statistics. So the types of community groups, Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society, there's a community family support group based in Sechelt near our place that also had the same reaction. Why do we need 3 reports for one Sunshine Coast? The other example is all 3 governments were given the same provincial regulations with regards to Bill 47, and all 3 local governments had the same deadline, and we end up with zoning bylaw addressing the small multi-unit housing that are slightly different in all 3 communities. I attended a session with Destination BC and Sunshine Coast Tourism recently, where the same comment was made about the fact that we have 3 separate bylaws with different fees for the film industries in the 3 communities. So I think we would like to really encourage the 3 local governments to sit down with facilitators, and it's hard for staff to think about, how they might change their attitudes and their habits, and things are ingrained, but look at collaboratively exploring ways to save money for taxpayers by working together and having one staff person do a report for all 3 communities, or having the same kind of language in all the bylaws and harmonizing things so that you make life easier for the business community as well as all the residents. So those are the 4 asks that we have. And in closing, I'd like to thank our ex officio members who have been attending meetings and participating in basically an exchange of information between the business community, the board of directors, and the local governments. And we really appreciate that spirit of collaboration that is very evident when people come to speak with us. It's a really good exchange of information, and we appreciate it. At this point, I'll handle any questions. And I'd like to introduce Ed Pedno, who's the Executive Director of the Sunshine Coast Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Thank you very much. If I can get you to stop the screen share. Director McMahon, I see your hand up first.
Yeah, a lot of asks, and of course, the regional district does not do business licenses.
No.
Growth zone. So my understanding of it is it is a software that basically takes publicly available statistics like Census Canada and regurgitates it in a more attractive format. But since we contracted with Growth Zone a few years ago, the province has launched its own portal, which provides the same information. So I'm wondering if we still need Growth Zone.
Through the chair, Growth Zone is basically a database of our membership. And it has nothing to do with the BC government. It is, yeah.
My mistake, sorry, that was a different platform that Scredo was paying for
Yeah.
at the time.
It's a database that had been created by Scredo with different members participating, and we think that it's an extremely valuable database.
Thank you. Director Inkster.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. When you do your Invest Sunshine Coast thing next year, last time we talked, I was hoping it'd be earlier. You always want to encourage investment tomorrow, right? So one of the things I hope you do, and we can talk more about it, is targeting investments. We don't talk enough about high tech. Quality of life is a big seller for here, and relatively low cost of living to housing in other areas that have high tech. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is hopefully will be a discussion to figure out why this is happening, but for construction companies locally who are very busy to be able to build bigger. So a lot of the buildings that are built in our communities tend to have, you see a lot of outside larger construction companies come in and do it. It'd be good if we could figure out a way to get the local construction companies to do those large projects. So that's local families benefiting directly from the costs, from the labor expense associated with the cost of building that building.
Through the chair, I'd like to clarify a couple of things. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We need investment today. But I think the benefit of a careful plan to invite people here is we want to target not just the obvious. When you want to run a successful Invest in a Community forum, you want to have more than developers. You want people in the investment industry on the finance side. You want people interested in tourism, in other types of fields, insurers, realtors, et cetera. With regards to the opportunity as well, I would be remiss without mentioning the industrial lands that I think are in one of your SCRD's strategic plan. It has been a goal expressed, but the presentation of that opportunity, I think, is something that would require time to work on and some resources to work on as well. So I think it would be very important for the local governments to get together with us and to decide, okay, are we going to use this forum to promote the Langdale industrial lands, and if so, here's the kinds of things that we need to do to have a great presentation to investors, and getting them in the room, not one after the other, getting them in the room together to create a sense of competition among people who want to invest. They walk away with the really nice images about the coast and hopefully enjoy some of the benefits of being here. And then they think about it from a comparative point of view. They want to invest in this place because it invests in itself and it's trying to grow.
Thank you. Director Stanford.
Thank you, Chair. I do really hear your comment about the frustrations of making sure the municipalities and the regional district collaborate where possible. Just so you're aware, the housing needs assessment report, we were all frustrated that there was 3, but that was the BC requirement. It's a legislative requirement. We didn't have an option of collaborating on that. And it's very basic stats. We're hoping that we will be able to use those stats to have a more collaborative approach to our housing needs across the region. But that just happened to be one of the requirements from the government. So I think there are opportunities, and I thank you for making us aware and reminding us at all times that we are trying to collaborate. And another reason why is efficiencies for tax purposes. So yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Stanford. And as of this morning's committee meeting, once we approve the recommendations, of course, Director Stanford will continue to be the chamber liaison from the Sunshine Coast Regional District. So the Seashell one has changed, yes. But Director McMahon.
Yes, I'll echo Director Stanford's comments about the housing needs assessment, because looking at electoral areas in isolation from the broader community it makes no sense at all, because obviously the municipalities have more services and completely different ability to deliver on more types of housing than you can in the rural areas. So I hope that goes forward. In terms of investment attraction, which came up previously, I would be interested at some point in seeing some statistics on how many applications or cases there are on the coast and how successful it's been, and whether it's, the program is worthwhile for us here on the Sunshine Coast. I haven't seen much on it in a few years, so I'm curious as to, the benefits of the program. Thanks.
Thank you. One thing I did want to ask about, because it's a question that we've had last board meeting, I think, the provincial nominee program, and how the chamber is looking to interface with that program, because we got the letter of support request, but we wanted more information, and here you are. So
Yeah.
could you tell us a little bit more about that program and how the chamber is looking to tie into that program?
Yeah. The chamber didn't look for that. It was one of the things that fell off when Scredo went on a pause. A few directors of Scredo were aware that this was taking place. So we were approached by PNP, by the province, the provincial program, and asked if we would pitch in, and we did assist one investor who was struggling with the fact that he couldn't find the conditions were written too narrowly, and he wanted to find a place in the Sunshine Coast, but he was basically confined to just Gibson's, because that's the word that was on the form. So we helped that gentleman out, and that investment is taking place right now. The PNP program administrator is asking us to formalize this, and the appointment of the Chamber of Commerce, and we're not asking for money, we're just going to pick up the responsibility from Scredo. The appointment requires a letter from the community, and we think that SCRD would be the best organization to give us that blessing from the local government that you trust the Chamber of Commerce to do a good job of helping people who are coming here as immigrants wanting to invest in this community.
Thank you for that. Directors, are there any other questions for our delegation? It's not a standard practice for us to make motions at the time of delegation, so no need to particularly make any motions today. But any other questions? No? Then, oh, go ahead.
May I clarify one point, because it was raised by two directors, and often I think it would not be a guideline that would be distributed necessarily to directors, but the provincial guideline for the housing needs assessment encourage regional districts to work with their communities. So there's language there that is not only permissive, allowing you to have one housing needs assessment for several communities, but it actually encourages regional districts to organize that for the communities. So there's no restrictions against having only one report for the Sunshine Coast for the housing needs assessment.
Okay, thank you for that. Director Stanford?
I think it's just clear for that one requirement that that's what we were doing. But any other assessments, definitely, that's how we'll work it.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up, so thank you for coming here today. Thank you. And yeah, look forward to further conversations. All right. Directors, we are going to move on to item number 6.1, which is Committee of the Whole Meeting Recommendations 1 through 9 of November 28th, 2024. Before we adopt the block, directors, are there any that you want to pull for further consideration or discussion? I don't see any hands up. So may I have a motion to endorse the block? Moved, seconded by Director McMahon. Thank you, Director McMahon. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. Oh, Director Bax, are you just pre-voting? Just ready to vote? Okay, then I will call the question. All those in favor? All right, that is carried. Thank you. All right, next up, we have item 6.2, which is the summary of the intergovernmental water summits, starting on page 61 of our agenda package. CAO, did you want to say anything? I mean, it's here for information. This is the series of water summits that we had between all the local governments. So when we talk about collaboration across the coast, this is one of the positive examples of it. And I think the nation was spearheading this and responsible for getting this summary put together. So thank you for that. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I appreciate the summary because we need a forward-facing document about it. But I will say that I remember very clearly, especially in the second water summit, we talked about the importance of food growing, local food growing and water for agriculture. It attracted a lot of attention on the poster boards on the wall and that, and it is nowhere reflected in this report. There is nothing about food, there is nothing about food security, local agriculture, anything. And I am not happy with that because I think it is an important value that we have around water. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that comment. And I mean, certainly these were 4 mostly day-long sessions. So I imagine there's probably other. Thank you, Director McMahon. Anybody else? Any comments or questions? It's here for information, so we have received it. With that, we're going to move on to item 6.3, which is the 2025 chair appointments, which I suppose is mine to talk about. It's here for information on page 67. I've talked with everybody about these. At this time, we're not looking to change the finance committee because we're midway through budget. But when we finish the budget process, I'm hoping that we can have a conversation about changing the finance committee to just being a budget committee, so it'll only meet around the budget. Right now, we have a smattering of finance committee meetings scheduled through the year to talk about, audit plan and receive the SOFI report, things like that. So just try to condense it down a little bit, make more effective use of everybody's time. So I do have a list of appointments here. These would all be effective as of January 1st. We still got next week's meeting to get through. And so I will make the motion that's on page 67. If somebody, thank you, Director Gabius. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, we have no communications. Oh, my apologies. Corporate Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Staff would actually like to request that we bring the November 28th board minutes back for a quick reconsideration of a financial correction we want to make to recommendation number 34 on page 20 of the minutes.
All right. I need a motion for that, right? To bring it back for reconsideration?
Yes.
Thank you. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Okay. Does somebody want to speak to this?
Yes, the value in that recommendation was inaccurate. Budget Proposal 7 for the Seashell Landfill BC Hydro connection It says funding required was 71,000. That is correct, that's the additional top-up, but in the end, that Sunshine Coast Regional District authorized up to, that has to say 370,666. Because for MFA, they need the total combined amendment, so.
Sorry, what page number was that on?
It's 20 of the minutes for the agenda.
23. Page 23, okay. Okay, all right, I see the question or the comment here. So can I have a motion to amend the minutes then? Because, that's all we're looking for here, right, isn't it, amending those minutes? To reflect the correct dollar value?
It would be sufficient if the board just approved them as corrected, and we would make the correction.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Inkster. Seconder, Director McMahon. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay. All right. Now we're on to item 8.1, which is a notice of motion that I have filed. So I will speak to this. We've had some conversations over the years about making some changes to the expense policies. In looking at examples from other jurisdictions, TNRD, ACRD, looked at a number of things that I think were important to pull out and make some changes to our policy on. Wanted to get this moving quickly rather than waiting for us to spool up a policy committee meeting because it's the end of the year. It's an opportunity for us to make some changes so that we've got a new policy in place in January when we adopt the amended policy. So I've got the motion here. Director White, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to, I just want to make sure about something. I guess this is what I want to ask about. Like I've been probably, I guess, the only person here who's been trying to navigate this policy for 10 years, and it's always changed. And I mean, there are things that are still around. It seemed to be clearest about that time, 10 years ago. There was when we had an orientation in 2014. There was some really clear direction. There was a lot of you could get responsiveness from the CAO at that time about and I think it's just kind of become more complicated ever since, and things being added. And the thing that what I find most confusing is things get added, and this was the case with the remuneration for directors too over the years. Things tend to get added and nothing gets taken away, and then things tend to contradict with each other. And my main concern is when the policy is changed, we need to make sure things are taken away too. So I don't necessarily see that in this wording, but things like, I mean, I haven't reviewed it myself, but I feel like there's something in there, and it's confusing too, because when you look up things, there are different versions, but I think there's something about buying, directors can buy a computer for their home office up to $2,000, and I think for printers and things like this too. I've never utilized this, but is that the kind of thing that would be taken away if the policy now says constituency expenses are more specific? Because I think that's an example of where things just get more complicated and confusing and convoluted, which I find them to be now, if things aren't taken away.
Yeah, the policy, which ironically enough, I don't actually have it open right now with everything else I have open for this meeting, but the existing policy speaks to, I believe, accessory devices like printers and things of that nature that must be purchased within the first 2 years of the term in order to be eligible for expensing. I don't think it speaks to computers specifically, but because the SCRD supplies devices. If directors choose not to use the SCRD device, I think it does speak to them being sort of responsible for their own technical support. I'm going to go to the CAO.
Thank you, Chair. So I think because we don't have a copy of the policy here, so this is a hard discussion. So I think that procedurally, the notice of motion would be taken in consideration. We'd bring it back, and then we'd bring back some suggested amendments to the policy. And if there's considerations of, other related policies, those types of things, that could be for consideration as part of this motion here. It could be an iterative process. We bring a draft. It could be as amended or as presented, but I think it's difficult right now to have the discussion and debate because you're not prepared. This is really just signaling that you'd like some of these elements to be considered in a draft policy that you'd like to review outside of the policy committee as soon as possible in January. So we would do that, and then I think you'd be more prepared to have a debate about it.
Thank you. And just before I come back to you, Director White, one of the examples here in the first part of the motion, item E, is to replace constituency office expenses with office supplies, because the CRA has a very specific definition about office expenses, and that's rent and hydro and utilities, which are not things that the board has ever contemplated as being eligible for expensing. And so the definition that we use doesn't really match the real world. And so in this case, it's about tightening up a lot of that language so that it sort of aligns with what the intent as directors have expressed over the years is. And if I'm not, maybe speak to this, because the Remuneration Committee had a lot of recommendations to make about the expense policy, and I think they were pretty much all incorporated at that time. So, but I'll come back to you as a follow-up.
I thought they were, but I still see some around. Now that I'm a director, rather than being a member of the committee, I still see things around that we did recommend to just kind of get rid of or streamline. They're still there, actually. So, I guess my main recommendation also from that experience too is like try to make it more simple, because it just seems like what we found was things kept being added over the years by different boards. And I mean, I think it's interesting right now too, in that we've kind of, at least in my experience, because the last two boards, one was pre-COVID and then one was during COVID. And I think that kind of changed the approach of in-person meetings in constituencies versus needing more funds for like that constituency allowance came in the last, the $100 for technology. And I think that's been one of the confusing things, because that's now there, and yet then what happens to other expenses that are related to that? Are they all? But I think that's the clarity you're trying to achieve there. So that'll help, and to get that actually into policy will help. But I do, one thing I'd caution is let's make sure it doesn't get more complicated with a big pile of different values and intents from over decades of of boards trying to tweak this.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I did go through the expense policies recently. They aren't very complicated in my view. I think this provides helpful clarification without increasing the budgeted amount, which is possibly a concern. The only thing personally that I wanted to flag is that in the travel expense policy, there's a list of sort of pre-approved conferences like AVICC and UBCM, and that list includes FCM, and I would want us to reconsider whether FCM is an automatically approved expense or not, because it's very, very expensive. Like any director can come to the board and say, I would like to go to this conference, and we can pass a motion saying that we'll cover their expenses, but I think we should not consider that a pre-approved conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McMahon. And I think it's a good conversation when the modified policies come back. I'm pretty sure my notice of motion ends up being longer than one of the policies actually is, because it's incorporating changes to two separate policies here. So Director Inkster.
Mr. Chair, it's kind of like a tome, your list there. FCM, I never knew. The missed opportunity. Yeah, I better get cracking on that one. Although being in Whistler was always so cheap, so if we ever get that BC opportunity, it's good to go. I'm just saying, it's good for us to all go. It's very cheap. Am I hearing in this then that, and I don't mind, I'd love to see us cut some. When that comes to us, I'd rather cut than add. I like that. Am I hearing that it's coming in January? Is that what I heard? Because you have a long list here. You were hoping to get it done today. Does that mean we'll be doing it in a month?
My motion is just for these policies to be amended and come back for us for approval
With
at
the
a January
policy-
board meeting.
With the policy though, correct?
Well, it
Yeah.
would be, yeah, it would be the policy.
In January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good. Okay.
Director McMahon.
I'd like to make that motion.
I suppose I will second my motion. Thank you, Director McMahon. I don't see any other discussion on it at this time. Again, we will have the policies come back in January for approval, so we can have more conversation at that time, especially over things like FCM or anything that we might be able to remove from the policy. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Sunshine Coast Regional District 2025 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 769/2024. We've got a staff report attached to it. CAO, CFO, did you want to give a brief introduction or?
Yeah, thank you. This is a standard report for us to borrow in advance of receiving our tax funds in August. It is recommended that it be increased because obviously our operational budgets have substantively increased over the years, so hence what's reflected. So there are some information in there just about how much we've used and how much interest we've used. So happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director McMahon.
Yeah, most people don't realize that we have to borrow in advance of receiving our tax funds, which is sort of an odd thing. 4.33% was at the writing of this report, but I believe the Bank of Canada has since lowered the interest rate. Are we getting a better deal?
Yeah, but reciprocally, we'll earn less because we manage our money. So when we have money, we invest it, and when we need money, we borrow against it. So we do actually provide almost a net gain, just because of how active we are with our cash flow. But so how it works out in the wash is always relative.
Thank you. I do have some recommendations here on page 71 before we move to bylaw readings. Thank you, Director Lee, for moving those. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Director McMahon. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so moving on to the bylaw readings themselves. Would anybody like to move first, second, and third reading of Sunshine Coast Regional District Bylaw number 769/2024? That's what I just asked. Thank you, Director Inkster, for moving all three readings. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director McMahon. Any other discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Can I have a motion for adoption of bylaw number 769/2024? Director Inkster, ready to go. And Director McMahon, again, thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's carried. Excellent. Thank you. So with that, we are going to move, I suppose I should clarify, these are all, well, the next couple are weighted votes for all directors. Nope, that's not true. The very next one here, water rates, is A, B, D, E, F, C Shelt. So this is Sunshine Coast Regional District Water Rates and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 422.47/2024. On page 75 of our agenda package. Would somebody like to give me a motion for first, second, and third readings of the bylaw? Director Bax, seconded Director Inkster. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? And that is carried. And can I have a motion to adopt Sunshine Coast Regional District Water Rates and Regulations Amendment Bylaw 422.47/2024? Motion to adopt, moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that is carried. Next up, we have Planning and Development Procedures and Fees Amendment Bylaw number 522.19/2024. This will be electoral area directors, one vote each. Can I have a motion for first, second, and third reading? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Electoral area directors, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And can I have a motion to adopt Planning and Development Procedures and Fees Amendment Bylaw number 522.19, 2024? Director Lee, moving adoption. Thank you. Director Gabius. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Sunshine Coast Regional District Sewage Treatment Facilities Service Unit Amendment Bylaw number 428.27, 2024. This is a weighted vote, A, B, D, E, and F. Can I have a motion for first, second, and third readings of this bylaw, please? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And I need a motion to adopt Sunshine Coast Regional District Sewage Treatment Facilities Service Unit Amendment Bylaw 428.27, 2024. Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? And that is carried. All right. Next up, on page 86, we have the Wood Creek Park Sewer User Rates Amendment Bylaw number 430.17, 2024. This is all directors, one vote each, but I will look to the area director to see first, second, and third readings. Moved and seconded. Thank you, Director Lee. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion's carried. And next up, we have adoption of Wood Creek Park Sewer User Rates Amendment Bylaw number 430.17, 2024. Move to adopt. Director Lee, thank you. Seconded by Director McMahon, thank you. And all those in favor? And that is carried. All right. Moving right along. Next up, on page 88, we have Painted Boat Sewage Treatment Facilities Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 644.9, 2024. Can I have a motion for first, second, and third readings, please? Thank you, Director Lee, seconded by Director Gabius. This is all directors, one vote each. I don't see any hands, so I will call the question. All those in favor? And that, Director McMahon, you're in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Your hand went up after everybody else's came down, so just clarifying. All right, and a motion to adopt Painted Boat Sewage Treatment Facilities Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 644.9, 2024. Thank you, Director Lee, for moving. Seconded by Director Gabius. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. All right. Moving right along, page 90, Saginaw Ridge Community Sewage Treatment System Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 714.7, 2024. Looking for first, second, and third reading, if it so pleases. The area director, thank you. Moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Gabius. I look for any discussion. All those in favor? That's carried. Next up, I need a motion to adopt Saginaw Ridge Community Sewage Treatment System Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 714.7. Thank you, Director Lee. Director Gabius seconding that. All those in favor? And that's carried. Next up, we have Sunshine Coast Regional District Waste Collection Amendment Bylaw number 431.28, 2024. It's on page 92. It's a weighted vote. A, B, D, E, and F. So my rural directors, can I have a motion for first, second, and third readings, please? Thank you, Director Gabius. Thank you, Director Stamford, for seconding. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And can I have a motion to adopt the Sunshine Coast Regional District Waste Collection Amendment Bylaw number 431.28, 2024? Moved. Seconded by Director McMahon. All those in favor? Nope, that's not me. It is carried, though, by the rest of you. Thank you. Getting ahead of myself, ready to vote for the next bylaw. Okay, almost there. Page 94, Sunshine Coast Regional District Sanitary Landfill Site Amendment Bylaw number 405.27, 2024. Can I have a motion for first, second, and third readings? This is voting A, B, D, E, F, Seashelt, Gibson's, SNGD. So this is everybody. Director Lee, thank you. Seconded by Director McMahon. Any discussion on this? Call the question, voting all directors, all those in favor? And that's carried. And can I have a motion to adopt Sunshine Coast Regional District Sanitary Landfill Site Amendment Bylaw number 405.27, 2024? Moved by Director Lee, seconded by Director Stamford. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Page 97, Sunshine Coast Regional District Building Amendment Bylaw number 687.4, 2024. Director Gabius?
Thank you, Chair. I just have something was brought to my attention. What is the current removal of notice on title fee? Do we know? Looking in the room, there's no one to answer, but
GM Hall's online. I
Oh, is he
believe it's
now?
$100, but I will look to the GM.
Chair, I would just need to look that up for confirmation. I can do that in the next moment.
How do you feel about moving on to the plumbing amendment bylaw and coming
do
back to it?
good idea.
All right, so what we're gonna do then, okay, Director Bax, I see your hand.
Yeah, I have another question about the building fees. Let me find it again. Schedule B at the top of page 99,
Okay.
it's, the fee's $150 for a building valued of $1,000 or less, and I think that's a little,
Permit of $1,000 or less. We hashed this conversation out at this at the meeting where we discussed this.
so
Okay.
there's no change that can happen in this, is there? I just want to protest that it's,
We are not amending this bylaw on the fly. If directors are unhappy with this bylaw, we will refer it back to staff. We're not in a we don't have a deadline to get this adopted.
okay,
Doesn't have to be adopted by December 31st, unlike the utility rates.
right.
So if
good
directors,
to know.
if directors did want to have further conversation about it, we could refer it back. GM Hall, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the current fee is, as you stated, $100. Thank you.
How much? 100, 400?
$100 and it's going to $1,000. So it's currently $100, proposed to go to $1,000. This is the notice on title process that we go through at the board. We went through at the last board meeting, in fact. So, okay.
Wow.
I don't see any hands up. I'm gonna ask Director Bax to speak because his hand is now up.
Yes, so what's the process to refer this back to staff for further?
You could make a motion to say refer this bylaw back to staff for consideration of, and then list what you would like changed, and you see if you get any support for it.
Right, I will refer, I would like to make a motion to refer it back to staff to look at the question of a couple of the fees. The first tier of building fees. I have a staff member with their hand up.
I'm gonna go to the corporate officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So these fees have already been approved by board resolution. The bylaw is just the process to bring forward and enshrine them into law. So if the board wants to send the bylaw back, staff would have to come forward to potentially amend the fees that were previously adopted. So there would be a few steps to this.
Yeah, the point is that we would not be seeing this at the next meeting for readings and adoption, for example. We would have to reaffirm or change direction with the fees that we have already approved.
I don't know.
Okay,
Do we know that?
I'm gonna, sorry.
One other nuance to this, and not having the resolution in front of me where these fees were adopted by the board, if there was a director in the board meeting who opposed that, that director would not be able to suggest this comes back for reconsideration. It would have to be one of the directors who voted on the prevailing side of that motion.
With that said, that's a good point. I think we're going to take just a 4-minute recess just to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, as I turn my own video on, to the regular board meeting of December the 12th. We are currently on item 9.10 in our agenda, page 97. This is Sunshine Coast Regional District Building Amendment Bylaw number 687.4, 2024. Having heard some objections from Director Bax, can't ask for a motion to do all 3 readings at one go. So I would look for a motion for first reading of bylaw number 687.4, 2024. Director Stamford moves that. Do I have a seconder? Director Lee is seconding that. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion? Director Bax?
Yes, I think that a minimum 15% charge on the building fee. I'm sorry, I don't have the language in front of me. The building permit fee between $0 and $1,000. I think that the fee of $150 makes it a minimum of 15% of the cost of the building, and I think that's a bit onerous. I don't think that someone who's putting a $1,000 staircase onto their building should add $150 onto their building costs. I think it could possibly be a percentage rather than a flat fee. I know that there's a certain amount of staff work involved, but I don't think this is the answer.
Okay, thank you, Director Bax. Do I have anybody else that would like to speak to this, to first reading of this bylaw? Director Lee and then Director Gabius.
This requires a site visit by an official, and the idea is for user pay. So I will be voting for it. $150 is quite reasonable for a site visit.
Thank you, Director Lee. Director Gabius.
Because I brought it up, I guess I should talk about the removal of notice on title. I think we've been very willing to put notice on title, knowing that it was quite simple and inexpensive for notice on titles to be removed. And I'm just kind of trying to weigh the impact on making that jump to 1,000, and how will it affect our decision making when it's a big jump, and I'm not going to be able to say like it's not a huge it's not going to have a huge impact on you for homeowners. So that's what kind of jumped at me. It's just now I'm going to be looking at notice on titles differently, and I'm not sure, trying to weigh whether that's I don't know. Like I'm just a little, I'm on the fly here. I'm just thinking, so I should just turn off my mic.
Thank you. Director Stamford.
Specific to notice on title fees, when I see notice on title coming to us, I see that the amount of work that has gone in prior to that decision coming, that there's a lot of action by staff to try and resolve the situation and with the landholders. And this is like step number 17. So I'm comfortable with looking at the amount of fee, and that it may support people actually resolving the situation more expediently if they do know there's a higher fee. So I'll be voting in support of this.
That's a good point. Thank you, Director Stamford. Any other directors wishing to speak to it? Director McMahon, I thought I had seen your hand up, but would you like to speak to it?
I fear I will blither. I think we should have had this conversation earlier, unfortunately. I am sympathetic with Director Back's concern about the building cost, but I suspect there are very few files for anything. Like, what can you do for $1,000 these days? I just think the occasions are not going to arise very often, so I won't worry about it.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers, so I will call the question. Vote A, B, D, E, and F. All those in favor of first reading? And that's carried. Nobody opposed. Okay. Can I have a motion for second reading of bylaw number 687.4, 2024? Second reading. Thank you. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? That's carried. And can I have a motion for third reading of bylaw 687.4, 2024? Director Gabius, Director McMahon, all those in favor? That's carried. And can I have a motion to adopt building amendment bylaw number 687.4, 2024? Director McMahon and Director Lee and Director Bax, is your hand up?
I just wanted to say that it's that this part of the discussion is very helpful for me, and that the things that the way that I was thinking about it earlier, some of the things that the other directors have said to me have changed my mind.
Okay. Thank you, Director Bax. And with that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. So that is adopted. Thank you. Next up on page 102, item 9.11, Sunshine Coast Regional District Plumbing Amendment Bylaw number 400.4, 2024. This is A, B, D, E, and F. Weighted vote, 2 votes each. first, second, third readings, and adoption. Can I have a motion for first, second, and third reading of bylaw number 400.4, 2024? Director Bax moves. Anybody? Thank you, Director Gabius, for seconding. Any discussion on this particular bylaw? All those in favor? And that is carried. And now can I have a motion to adopt bylaw 400.4, 2024? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that is carried. That takes us to the end of bylaws. Thank you, directors. Right, that's a whole lot of voting, but it's so much easier now than when we used to have to do every reading separately. Little smile out of the corporate officers, we're doing okay. Next up, we have directors' reports. And in the interest of time, I would invite directors to keep their reports brief or skip them if you don't have a lot to report. So I'm going to start at that end of the table. Director Stanford.
I don't have a lot to report as I was in Victoria at an Islands Trust Council meeting all last week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to go to Director Paul and then Director McMahon.
Yeah, same here. There hasn't been very much movement except for wastewater treatment plant, and the ongoing stuff for the outflow is still being designed and trying to find the best way to do it. So.
Thank you, Director Paul. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I just some quick ones. It's been quite a while since we did director reports. So November the 15th, I went to the Sunshine Coast Tourism Strategic Plan Workshop at Blue Ocean Golf Course. That was interesting because, it's a different group of people that we don't talk to on a regular basis. November 27th, I went to the PTAC meeting and a really interesting discussion there with many good points raised, the draft solid waste plan. November 28th, I went to the Hopkins Landing Waterworks meeting, which was, of course, the Area F show, but that also was really interesting. December 9th, I sat in for Director Gabius at the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And tomorrow morning, all morning, I have the AVICC Executive Committee meeting, and I'm going to be asking some of my colleagues, since it doesn't look like our agenda is too heavy, to do a bit of a roundtable to see how things are going in other jurisdictions right now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go all the way to the other end of the table, go to Director Lee.
That surprised me. I could have made a report. I don't really have much to report except that there is going to be our annual Christmas light parade in Pender Harbor on Saturday. It's Saturday instead of Sunday. And the boats will meet at 4:30 at Madeira, and the parade will start at 7. So if you want to watch a whole bunch of boats drive around the harbor with Christmas lights on, that's a good opportunity. But there's also Winterfest itself at the Harbor Authority facilities there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Director Lee. And Director Inkster.
Thank you, Chair. Sounds like our parade of lights on water. I guess Director Lee's a captain, maybe he will be. Last Saturday was our Festival of Lights and Parade. It went very well. I think the weather helps, no rain and slightly warmer than usual. I would say thousands of people were there. I got to hand out candy and I ran out of time. So that's a good sign there was a lot of people there. So I'm just saying if the directors didn't go, next year I hope you go. You're welcome to come to Sechelt to our parade every year. See you next year. Thanks.
Yeah, and before that, you've got Canada Day. Director White.
Director report. Send.
Nothing you want to highlight for the public that listens along? Okay. Director Bax.
Well, this weekend, the community associations have entered their last-minute craft sale. And Next Wednesday, our fire department will be donning the lights of the season, and with the Christmas carols blaring, we'll be driving through our community to, as a tradition that began during COVID, and the people of our community they love it. And I heard Santa Claus is going to be on one of the trucks as well. And besides that, there's usually there's Christmas events organized by the community association that are quite special. And I have nothing else to report.
Thank you, Director Bax. Director Gabius.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not much to report as I was away last week, but I want to say a big thank you to Director McMahon for attending the Sunshine Coast Accessibility Committee on my behalf, and I'm looking forward to the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long time since we've done director reports, actually. We canceled them the last two board meetings. So that being said, I've been too flat out to make notes. So maybe I'll have to have a look at Director White's and see what I can just steal from him. Not a lot to really add. It's been flat out with District to Seashelt and things in my personal life and things here. And Chair Lee has stolen all of my free time. Former Chair Lee has stolen all of my free time. And yeah, I don't really have anything to report. I think this is our last board meeting before the new year, though.
No.
So for those who are listening along, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you in January. Although I think there's an EAS next week, so maybe there will be some better messaging next week. And that's really all I have to report. So we have no new business today. And so with that, we do have a motion to go in camera. So can I have a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with section 90, subsection 1, ACK, and 2B of the community charter? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? That is carried. Any questions of our gallery?
No.
There's nobody in our virtual gallery, so we will flip to in camera, and we're just going to take a minute to refill our waters while we do that. Welcome back to the regular board meeting for December the 12th, 2024. It is 2:36. We've finished our in-camera session, so I look for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next one.